Today's webinar is brought to you by Cleaning and Maintenance Management Magazine. It's Facility Productivity Strategies Unleashed. And we're going to talk about whatever you need to hear. And we're going to ask you questions as well as we go through our webinar. And we do thank our sponsors, Gaussium and Sunbelt, and of course our panelists, which we'll introduce in a moment. But let's move on and just do a few housekeeping points here. I am Jeff Cross, your moderator. And assisting me today is Martha Schmidt. She's the ISSA virtual events producer. Anything goes wrong or we need help, she's there for us. She's pushing our slides and is our tech support. And Kathleen Misovic is the CMM managing editor. She'll be fielding the questions that you have and keeping track of those. And there are two ways to ask questions. We'll talk about that as well. But this is your magazine for the industry. For most of you here today, you're involved in cleaning buildings, whether as contractors or facility workers, but this is the magazine for you, for everything you need. You can get a print version of it or digital or both. It's all online at cmmonline.com. So this is all about you. There are two ways to communicate with us. You are muted, so you can make as much noise at your end as you'd like, but there is the Q&A portal and also the chat. So if you'd like to put a question in either one, that will work. And we might engage with you as we do some of the slides, but at the end of our presentation, we will have a Q&A portion of our webinar. That's about 15 to 20 minutes. So depends how long-winded Todd, Matt, and John become during our webinar today. This presentation will also be online in a few days, and everyone that registered will get a link to this recording as well. Want to mention this, that you might be part of the ISSA family at this time, but if you're not, there's an email there you can reach out to get information to become a member of ISSA. CMM is part of the ISSA family. We're one of the official publications, but we have 3 publications and all kinds of member benefits and educational opportunities for you. So there's your email if you want to reach out to that and connect with one of our member experts, membership@issa.com. We're going to start right off with our first sponsor message, so sit back and enjoy this. And we thank Gaussium for their sponsorship today. Our panelists, and we'll get right into our presentation with these folks. John Hill is the CEO of Robotics. Todd Stoneking is the facility supervisor at the University of Utah. And Matt Moberg is the ISSA CMI Director of Consulting. So lots of experience here to share with you today. We're going to go through some specific topics, but again, as well, answer questions you have. So use the chat, use the Q&A portal to ask your questions. You might think of them as we go through today, but anything you'd like to ask. And if we can't get to all questions today, there'll be follow-up as well after the event. My first chat question is this, and I'd like Matt, Todd, and John to kind of watch this as we do this. For those on our webinar, put in there what you do and how long you've been doing it. How long have you been in the cleaning industry, and what is your role? This will help our panelists kind of see, who's here, what kind of help might be needed, how they can tailor their responses to the questions that you might have. So if you do that now, or as we go through a few of these slides, that's fine, but it's good to see some of the experience and roles you have. So we have 16 years, Lana. Carrie, 6 months. Carrie's new to the industry. 20 years, 7. So we're going to have a wide variety of experience here, and looks like most have been doing this at least a few years. I would ask the question, do you know everything yet? But even if you've been doing this a long time, you probably don't. What do you think, John? Probably not.
Absolutely not. Yeah. Yeah. There's always something to learn, even for old guys.
Okay, so good to see. And we see different roles, but it looks like everyone or most are involved in facility management of some kind. So that's what we're here for. As we move on and keep the thoughts coming, our first topic is going to be kind of like a normal one in a way, because we know we need good people. But let's talk about team building and maybe some thoughts on how we do that. How do we find good workers and then build a strong team? You can find somebody, but then what do you do with that new hire or that employee to make them part of a cohesive team to really add value to your organization? And I'm going to start with Todd. Todd is our, in the field worker. He's out there managing buildings and people. So Todd, when you guys are looking for someone, thinking about this topic, what do you do?
So I'm going to tell you, it's not easy to find good workers that want to be part of an organization, but it does help for us where we're the flagship university in the state of Utah. So a lot of people say money's a big thing. We have found that money is not always a big thing. Sometimes it's stuff that comes along with that. And, when you work for a university, we offer a lot of things, including just your normal benefits. So generally we start, with the normal interview. We try to screen out people that don't sound like they really want to be involved. And then we bring them into interviews. And that's where we really talk more about, not only what the university offers, but what can you do for us? And we try to get into it and find people that we think will be a great fit for the university. And they're here not just to make that, dollar, but here to promote themselves and the possibility of stepping up at a later time. So that's probably the big things I think we look at to build the team, but then to find people that really do want to be the team or work with the team, not just, oh, it's me, just leave me alone, let me go do my thing. Because we're so big, you've got to be more than just yourself.
Good comments. I just put a question in the chat because I'd like to hear from all of you attendees. If you have something to share, let's help each other. If there's some little thing we're missing, put it in the chat, and our panelists can also see that and comment on that as well. But Matt, let's go to you. You work as director of consulting. This must be a question you get from time to time. What do you tell your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So we get this question somewhat across the board. Working right now with a group in Philadelphia, and they're having a really difficult time filling a role as a quality assurance advisor to their custodial contract. And we've even really tried some unique things there, from working with their HR department and changing the job title itself, and then diving into the actual content of the job description too. So it's really a tough environment to really find a lot of quality people. Either folks are looking for far more pay than employers are looking to offer, or maybe the job doesn't line up with the market itself. So we really press on trying to find unique fits. One of the things that we're looking at now is potentially looking at somebody that has no industry background, but might be willing to put forth the effort, learn a lot of the industry, and they really want to challenge themselves and learn something new.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Theodora just put in the chat that no call today and no show. Hard to find good people. That is an issue, and one that there's just no magic solution for. Now, John, let's go to you. And since I know you work in robotics, you can't say hire a robot, okay? But what do you think? Or maybe you can.
Before that, we had a cleaning company for 5 years, so I know the issue with hiring people and hiring the right people. So what we've done with this, it's more of a migrating from a startup to a regular company, is we've engaged, and I'll give them a shout out, a company called Luck Companies to help us with what we call values-based leadership, to set our culture around values. So we're setting our culture around values and then skill sets. If you talk to anybody who's a strategic planner, they'll tell you culture is much more important. And I heard Todd and Matt both say that is, strategy is strategy, but culture is everything. So we started that. Luck Companies has a not-for-profit or B Corp called Inner Will. So I challenge you guys to go out and take a look at it. It's a
All right. So when you think about this challenge of finding workers, once you have a team and you've got them in place, you want to monitor what they're doing. And of course, documentation is a big part of that. So let's move on to that topic and just talk about some of the tools that we could utilize and the proper impact of knowing what's happening in the field. And let's start with you, Matt, on this. Any thoughts to share here?
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, first thing, as far as tools go, the first tool that you have is clearly defining everything, right? And that goes not just the actual tasks you're doing, but are you working in a team cleaning environment? Are you working in a zone-based environment, individual handling a particular building environment? Defining exactly where you're cleaning first, right? And make sure all those directions and responsibilities are communicated. And then you get into the actual, implementation of, we really stress things like task cards, for example. So there's nothing left up in the air. Everything is clearly defined from the get-go. And when you're able to establish, right, clear roles and responsibilities for everybody, it allows you to communicate. It allows supervisors to delegate and managers to focus on managing rather than dealing with the little nuances that may happen on a day-to-day basis. And you really want to try to eliminate fire drills by, we call it idiot proofing sometimes, but you want to make sure that everything, again, is clearly defined and people are delegated in the responsibilities that they need to handle.
Thank you. And let's go to you, John, on this. What do you think?
Tools. So, I just pick up where Matt, workloading and defined roles. Where we're finding autonomous equipment, or when we go into areas, is really taking those duties out and then inserting the duties required for autonomous equipment, because they're not independent. They need to be worked into the workloading, and they're not independent of your overall workloading. So when you think about floor work, it's about 30% of the work, give or take. And with robotics, with vacuums and sweepers, we find that, at least for the open, like hallways and things, we can do 60 to 70% of all that work. So when you start to look at workloading, you think about tools that you need to optimize, we're talking productivity, to optimize that equation. And that article I wrote about disruption is kind of addressing that issue, because it's more of a strategic issue actually than a tactical for the industry to think about. Is how do we work those tools to optimize the productivity. One more thing is that if you look at cleaning, there's really three expenses. There's labor, of course, and all the expenses around there. There's equipment, and then there's consumables and so when you break it down, you can look at those, and then if you can trade out the labor and equipment for equipment, then you have a good tool replacement.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, appreciate that. And Todd, what do you folks do there at your university?
So a lot of it Matt has already covered and John has already covered. One of the big things, though, that I find is even more important is our communication to the employees. And that has to come from the top down, but also, from the people that work with each other. A lot of times you'll get managers that hire a new person. Here's your Johnny Mop, go to work. Well, it's got to be more than that. We've got to make sure they're properly trained, communicate to them about why and what we're doing. And then anytime there's a problem, it's just not, oh, hey, you did something wrong. It's like, here's what the problem is. Let's fix the problem and be able to work with those employees. It's one of the biggest problems I see is we don't communicate between our people. And then we find out, a week down the road that nobody was doing something and everybody thought everybody else was doing it. And, even if you have work cards and that, things get missed. And so that's probably one of the biggest things I would add in addition to what Matt and John have said.
You just experienced what going last means, Todd. Usually things are said in advance and you have to figure something out. But very
Jeff,
good addition. Yeah.
If I could just say one more thing,
Sure.
yeah, I'd like to reinforce that, Todd. What Todd just said. Communication's always the foundation of all the tools that we need.
That
I
it
think,
is.
well, everybody kind of hit on this, right? Talking about communication. We had just mentioned this on the last slide, is that building a culture where communication is fostered in a a progressive manner, right? Where everybody should be able to communicate, whether it's not just a top-down communication, it's also from a front line up. And that way, they can oftentimes see things that, supervisor and manager might not get the chance to see. And all that communication can flow both ways. And that's the only way to be really optimize efficiency.
And I love the thought about culture, because that's kind of a new thing. You didn't hear about it years ago as much as you do now, but it's definitely a big deal to create a effective team. Todd, we're gonna go to you on the next slide, because you can tell us a war story if you'd like when we think about facility challenges and complaints. Do you ever get those?
Oh, a lot more than we would like.
You're going to admit that in public?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we've done a lot better than we have in the past, because we've now set up networks and ways to get information back and forth. But, one of the biggest problems really still comes back down to that communication. We'll get a work order in or a ticket to do something, and somebody will go do it, but then they never say anything to the people we're doing it for. And so that information, never gets back that, hey, we've completed it, or we've completed it, and this was a problem we ran into. And so then it just escalates. The people will go up to the next, well, they didn't get this done, or they didn't get it done right. And so, if you can get that communication in, get involved, and let your customer know, that seems to be how we solve most of the complaints. One of the biggest things, like I said, we've created a network. We have online forums where people can go in, put requests in. We have a built-in system the university uses. They can go into that. And then we have leads in every building. Well, not maybe every building, but many buildings. And then we know, supervisors and managers, and all those phone numbers should be present with the people in the buildings. So if there's a phone or a problem, they can quickly get a hold of somebody. And most of the time that works really well. There's just a few times things slip through the cracks, and then all breaks loose. And those are ones we do not like. So we've tried to work on manners to, minimize that, and make sure that the people in the building know, hey, if there's a problem, you can contact this person. Or if you can't get a hold of them, this is the next person up, get a hold of them. And that seems to get rid of a lot of our complaints. I'd say probably the biggest complaint outside of that is just, how soon can you get to me? And unfortunately, when you only have a certain size staff, sometimes you get put off for a while. But if you're communicating with the people on that, then they understand.
There's that word again, communication. Matt, let's go to you.
Absolutely. I think communication is obviously a very important piece of this. I think one thing that I'd like to touch on is making building occupants feel comfortable with interacting with any cleaning department. A real good example is a gym that I go to. Every piece of equipment has a QR code on it. So if it were to break down, you can send a direct request in to have that piece fixed. And I've noticed that some restrooms and even rooms in general are utilizing a very similar technology. And I think it can be really beneficial, because I know we're going to hit on here a little bit later talking about autonomous cleaning equipment. Well, you can also streamline a lot of other processes like communication, where if somebody says there's a clogged bathroom in Ryan Hall, okay, well, then you have to have 5 emails explaining exactly which bathroom and which toilet that you're talking about. Where if you can be much more strategic with your communication, you can eliminate a lot of that non-value added back and forth. And that way, you know exactly where you're going, what your responsibilities is. Because on a day-to-day basis, a lot of things come up. And if you can eliminate the back and forth communication necessary to get to some of these issues and just go directly and fix the issues, that will really help out.
Good thoughts. And John, we'll wrap this one up with you.
So, yep. So speaking of autonomous equipment, a lot of times after you leave, you have a fear factor of using the machine. So we have a customer success person that reaches out to all the folks that have equipment and just talks to them on a monthly basis, at least if we don't hear from them. We also have a help desk that's 24/7 and those types of support. And we find we learn so much from from people calling in on how to deliver our products and services just from listening. And we do customer discovery as well, where we reach out, ask them how they're doing. But just staying in touch with a customer, and like, you know, Todd said, I mean, all these guys are internal customers. If you know, if it all breaks loose, I think was the term, then they're a little bit more forgiving if you don't get right to it.
I would have to think that if the ones you serve in your facilities, if they know you care and you're doing your best, that's got to move the needle to some degree. Whereas if the attitude is not there, that you don't care, then they're going to find reasons to complain. That's just my thought. Let's move on to our next slide, and let's talk about innovation. And maybe innovation and robotics and autonomous equipment is a solution to some of the challenges we face. I mean, if I'm going to wash a window, I wouldn't mind that right there. So, John, we're going to start with you. This is really in your field. What can you share with us that, you know, facility managers, those in buildings, working with budgets and being realistic, what can they expect? What do they need to know?
Wow. Let's see. Yeah, in 2 minutes or less or so.
Yes, and your time has started.
So really, technology doesn't solve everything. You know, that's the first thing to know. I think you know, I have a background as a CFO and in technology. I was a great COBOL programmer. So, but technology doesn't solve everything. And so that's the first thing to know is really, when you look at autonomous equipment, I'll focus on that. And I like this drawing, Jeff. I like it. When you look at which tool you should use, when we're talking about tools, it really gets down to which tool is the most productive. Sometimes autonomous equipment is more productive, but it has its limitations. Sometimes the mop and bucket is more productive. So, you know, in terms of innovation and technology, you know, we move to technology sometimes too quick. And we just have to make sure it pays. And like I mentioned, there are three, not to promote my articles, but there are three. I wrote an article on, there are three expenses, really general expenses and you know, and custodial. And so just being able to transfer those manual expenses to automated expenses, if it makes sense, then that's the time to do it. So then the second component is how you pay for it. So should you purchase it or should you lease it? So those are different questions.
Good points. Thank you for that. And Matt, let's go to you next.
Yeah, so this statement is slightly broad. You say everybody should use this, and I think John touched on it, which is not just you should use this, is this building, is the task that you're trying to accomplish, is it something that can be fulfilled by some form of new technology? I think that's really important to look at, is what is your overall strategy and what you're trying to accomplish? We all typically know that, you know, microfibers do a better job than cotton towel or paper towel in certain scenarios. But some of these technologies can also only be as good as the person using them, right? And having an understanding of things that can go wrong and how you're properly supposed to use them as well. So it really is, I think, something that, again, we talk about culture. It's got to be established about how we think of things and how we train on these things, to make sure not only are we incorporating new technologies, which are continuing to come out again and again, but not only, you know, saying, yeah, we're going to buy this and put it in there, but why are we buying it and putting it in there? And how does it factor in with our staff and the building occupants at the same time?
Good thoughts. I did put a question in the chat about how many here today use equipment that would fall into this category. So it's interesting to see that there are some that do, from vacuums to scrubbers and extractors. So Todd, let's wrap up with you on this thought. And obviously you work with budgets and convincing those who have the money to buy the equipment you need. What do you think?
So love technology. However, sometimes it's not a good fit, like it's been said already. But we actually have a group of people at our university that sit and look at products as they come out onto the market. And then we try to see where the fit might be good. There's a lot of new stuff, and we're not talking just about autonomous equipment, but as things have changed over the years, self-contained cleaning units that sometimes we find, oh, that's much better than a spray bucket and a spray bottle in a bucket, and so as that technology comes out, we've looked at it. And then when you put it into the area where the people are, you need to show them and explain to them that this is to make your life easier or to do a better job. And so that's a lot of how we look at our technology. Believe it or not, the university up here has not went to a lot of autonomous equipment yet, because most of our buildings are very small. And, to put a big machine in a building that's only 20,000 square feet does not work for us. However, it is something we continue to look at. And as a lot of these newer models have come onto the market, we're looking very serious at a lot of those. I love these little machines compared to the larger machines, because we could actually use them and then just wheel them next door to another building and start them again.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff, I think that's one thing that a lot of equipment manufacturers have continued to look at, which is bigger isn't always better, especially when it comes to autonomous. That there's I'd say a majority of buildings really aren't these giant open warehouses that you can roll through with a piece of autonomous equipment, and that, smaller might actually be better in most of the scenarios. And I did forget one thing when we talk about newer technologies that I really think folks should look into, and that's the connected devices, specifically in the restrooms. We've all been in facilities. We know we waste a lot of time going through and checking all the toilet paper and paper towel rolls, soap dispensers as well. Anything that we can get a notification on exactly where to go and when to go, you really streamlining operations at that point.
Thank you, Matt. John?
If I could wrap up, I agree totally with Matt on this in terms of indicators for that help out productivity in terms of bathrooms and the other areas that have dispensers. One of the things I'd like to talk to mention is we're talking productivity, is that now it wasn't thought of, you looked at productivity as maximum theoretical square foot coverage. But now with charging stations and swap out batteries and things, really you can start to look at where office buildings are only 6,000 square foot an hour. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that would have thought to be not productive. But with a charging station, you can run the unit all night long without anybody there. So productivity in terms of cleaning is changing with these new devices.
Good points. Thank you all for sharing those. Yeah, technology is a part of life now and will advance and get more effective and useful in the future. We have to be able to afford it, and it has to have a proper fit. But thank you for that. Let's move on and have our next sponsor message from Sunbelt.
How does Sunbelt Rentals keep a warehouse working? With robotic and smart technology that defies disruption. Scan the QR code for more.
Now, none of you were fast enough to scan that QR code. I know that because I tried it. So I'm going to leave it up on the screen for a minute if you want to do that. So if you're here as an attendee and you want to scan that, get out your phone and take advantage of that. Of course, you will get this recording as well, so you can access it there. But we thank our sponsors for this today. Yeah, that was quick, Armina. Very quick. All right, let's move on. So we have a chat question for everyone on our webinar today. And this will kind of drive some of the future talking points we have planned for you as well, because we want to talk about what your concerns are. So in the chat right now or in the next few minutes, think about your most challenging tasks or issues that you face. Now, we talked about hiring people. We talked about equipment, documentation, complaints, but what are some other things? You can repeat those if you'd like, if they're really maybe a twist to those you'd like to share, but give that some thought as we go through the rest of our presentation. What is it you face with your work that you want help with? So with that, let's move on and talk about your facility concerns. So what I'd like to do is have Todd, Matt, and John kind of look at the chats going through. And that's the point of this previous question. Let's start with you, Todd. As you see some of these concerns, we have employee retention, delegating, longevity of staff. What catches your eye? What would you like to comment on there from our audience?
Well, why don't we hit a little bit on that retention? Retention, it's hard because, down the street, there's the burger joint that's offering an extra $5 an hour, and you get to eat all the time there. However, most of those don't offer the benefits and things that we offer. So, culture is a big thing to us. And, I was just actually talking with a guy today, and he was telling me, yes, I could go out and get another job, make more money. But he says, here, I know I've got a constant, steady paycheck, and I know what's going to be happening. And this is one of our guys that goes around, checks elevators and makes sure they're safe for us. But that's one of our big selling points up here is that culture. And then we do try to do a whole bunch of things for the employee along with that. We do barbecues, we do Christmas dinners, and other things that might be great, get the employees involved. So it's just not like show up to work, go home, show up to work, go home. But hey, in 2 weeks after, hey, we're going to have a little potluck, bring something, share it with all the other employees. And so we do some things like that. We also have these little cards that each of the managers have that is a caught in the act card. And we can hand those out to our employees, and you fill it in, who it's from, what the task was, or whatever they did. And then they can turn that into one of our little food places here on the campus and actually get lunch provided to them. And we've actually been working on some other things like that, where they can go to our bookstore and, pick up a treat or something, just kind of a way of saying, hey, thanks for it. And that kind of, we hope, helps not only to keep the retention, but to motivate the employees.
I like that. A lot of what you just said is almost like a family feeling, like you're just taking care of each other. I'm sure that's what is the vibe with your workers there, Todd. Thank you. In fact, hiring and retention was mentioned the most, I think, in our chat from those here today. Employee retention, hiring and retention, at least 3-4 times. So it is a concern. So John, let's go to you. What in our list here catches your eye you'd like to talk about?
Well, I agree with you. I'm looking at the chat. Employee retention is high for us as well. We focus on education, so we offer any type of education. Now, the neat part about the 21st century is, if you want to learn something, you can learn it. So we focus on education, trying to better understand what our employees want. We have a concept of high performing teams, so it's trying to stay in touch with our new employees. And one of the things that we're working on a lot is onboarding. I saw that comment before, is how to onboard better. I've been working for 40 some years, and onboarding is not an exact science, and we're always trying to improve it.
Yeah, there's some good comments here. Thank you, John. One is low staffing and the ability to clean for health with the staff we have. That's a good one. Matt, we'll wrap up with you. What do you think? Which of these do you want to comment on?
Sure. I was going to comment on the workloading strategies. Actually, I saw here in the chat, Todd Clark asked the best way to do a time and motion study, which is going to relate directly to what we're doing with workloading strategies. And one of the things that we always implement here is making sure, again, we keep reiterating the what's really important, which is documentation, right? And really setting out a clean, well thought out workflow. And I think if you have the ability to go off of building plans and sketch everything out, you really need to pay attention to things like, where are your custodial closets? We preach time and time again, having a standardized set in your custodial closet, having things labeled, clearly defined. So it doesn't matter which employee goes in there, they know where things are, they know what things are and how they should be applied in the field. Those are some of the things from a workloading principle aspect that we really look at and we really preach time and time again in the field.
Good points. Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, if I could mention one additional thing.
Sure.
Matt hit on it, time and motion studies. I've done a lot of that in different industries. And, things like Lean 5S, just simple things that, what Matt's talking about. When we had the cleaning company, just properly storing your cart could save you lots of times. And I think that's one of the things that Matt was talking about, but just simple stuff like that. And 5S and lean is another tool that folks can use to help organize. So.
Thank you. Yeah, Jeremy asked a question about transitioning from old paper and pen to web-based systems. And Tavo agrees with that comment. Not maybe something we can solve today, but that's something for our panelists to note and maybe follow up with as well, because they'll be able to reach out to those with questions and concerns. This webinar, once it's over, is not over. Our panelists are here for the industry. So keep that in mind as we move past our webinar today. Good stuff. Let's talk about money. Let's move into this slide and talk budgets. And, you're given a certain amount of money to work with. Any thoughts on how you can do more with less? That's a cliche, right? But it's reality as well. So let's start with Matt on this one. I'm kind of forgetting who we started with last time, but Matt, what do you think? As a consultant that you are, how would you address this?
Well, more with less. I think I've seen it mentioned here in the chat about, not only finding employees, but also retention, right? When somebody leaves, you have to replace them. How do you make sure you retain people, right? Time and time again, day in and day out, I always hear people having problems with labor. From a contractor's perspective, I've implemented a couple programs where we look at actually in-house as well at Penn State University. So I will not hold that against Jeff, being an Ohio State fan. But do simple things like working with folks at their desks to say, okay, we have one universal area to take your trash at the end of the evening. If you want to dump the trash from your desk, there's one area that's designated as that trash. So at the end of the day, you put it there. And that can eliminate a cleaner having to go desk to desk to collect the trash. And it seems like a very simple thing. And again, we talk about communication, downflow and upflow of communication. That's something that you have to be in touch. And it's why it's important to create a culture where it's okay for cleaners to talk to building occupants and building occupants to have their feedback. Because when you get into a situation where a program like this could benefit you, having the open communication back and forth can really benefit you. And that's one of the things that we've done is find unique ways to utilize little programs that can really save a lot on labor so that you can get to the actual cleaning task.
Yeah, I like those thoughts. And I think your ideas are good. Communication would have to happen, because if you just say, here's where you dump your garbage, that's not going to work. But proper communication and logic will help drive that. So
yeah, and it usually starts in the first stages, right? It's like, here's the program we're looking to implement. And you don't just implement it tomorrow. You follow up with, here's certain strategies, here's the days and times, here's the locations. It's an educational process for the other folks as well, not just within a department or a contractor.
Absolutely. All right, Todd, what do you think?
Budgets, they're hard because, when you work for a university, more money just does not magically appear if you do more additional work. And so sometimes it just comes down to, you have to figure out really what's most important for the staff in the building. For us, we do what we call an SLA, or a service level agreement, with most of our buildings. There is normal stuff we do all the time, and that's just part of the day-to-day. But if the building comes in and says, man, we'd really love to have our main offices cleaned daily instead of 2 times a week, which was our normal thing, then we'll say, well, what are you willing to give up in order to have that? And a lot of times it's like, well, we don't even use this room maybe once every 2 months, so clean it once a month. And so, that's one way that we've did that. We do work with our departments up here, and if they do want something special and they have the funding, then we will let them create a work order to pay for that. And a lot of times we can bring in staff, on weekends or outside the normal time, but that's addition to our normal budgeting. And, budgets are hard, especially when they're set. It's just like your home budget. You got this much for gasoline, pay the rent, and buy the food. So you can't go out for steak every night.
What a shame.
I know.
Todd, what you just said, it sounds like communication, negotiate and compromise, all of that, to when you talk to your ones you're working for and trying to get what they want done with what you have to offer.
Yes, most certainly.
Okay. All right, John, wrap it up for us on this slide.
So, budgets are a lot of times not constructed correctly. So, since I'm a CFO, I guess I can say that. But so looking at budgets when you build them to make them realistic. So you had a time and motion study. Someone mentioned that, and so building your budgets from the work that you have to do. So workloading makes a lot of sense in that the way you build your budgets. Then also being able to understand what the foundation of your services that you're offering, how much they cost. Just like what Todd said, if somebody wants an additional room cleaned, then there's a resource consumption there, and so you have to budget that. It's not magic. It's just actual operations. And something Matt said, I have a kind of a case study. We had a cleaning company. We did K through 12. One of our customers was K through 12 schools, and elementary schools and elementary classrooms, as you guys know, have 4 or 5 trash cans in every room, and it's like hide and go seek. So what we save 50% of our time by just having the teachers stick their trash cans outside the classroom, and we reduce 50% of our complaints because we would miss trash cans. So, or probably even more than the complaints, but we save 50% of our time. So when you're putting your budgets, the theme is when you're putting your budgets together, think about the work you got to do.
Thank you. And before I move on, I do want to comment on Jamie Torin. He put this in the chat. He stepped up and is taking training in areas they normally hire contractors for to save the company money. I mean, that's nice to see that attitude, willing to do more to take the training. And isn't it all about training? It could be any type of training. It always makes us better people, better workers. The next one is fun. Okay, so for Matt, Todd, and John, if you can go back and change something and do it again, thinking about how it would impact now. And I want everyone on this webinar to think about this for yourself as we consider this topic. If you can go back and change something, what would that be? And can we learn from that and do something moving forward? So John, let's start with you.
So what comes to mind is when we started the cleaning company, we were going to use automation to increase productivity. That's kind of my background as a CFO, is taking companies and trying to increase the productivity over the resources that you have. So we were going to put in robots, and to use robots to signal, you need a cell phone. And when we hired all of our people, we didn't ask them what kind of phones they had. So most of them had flip phones. So we learned a lot in terms of the workforce right off and our expectations. But I think that's a lot in the movement when we talk about tools and productivity. Everybody wants to increase productivity and increase profitability. But as you're doing it, when you're putting in autonomous robots, for instance, you just can't. You have to realize your capacity and your productivity. You can't just take people out of the process and not backfill with a robot. They're not equal. It's so by I'd say what I've learned over time and continue to learn is how to optimize the workloading, and I think it's been a theme.
Good points. And let's go to you, Todd, on this.
So there's a lot of areas I would have do-overs. I wished we could have been where we're at now 20 years ago, but it's taken that long to get there. Some of the things that I still see we've made mistakes on, from the past. It used to be that's the way we've always done it. We're just going to keep doing it that way. And it's been a really hard push to get that mindset gone. And so, that's taking the culture issue and building on that and getting people to understand that, no, that's not the way we've always done it. We did that now for a while because that's what was a better thing at that time. But we need to look at what is better for this time, and that's one of the big things I've seen. We've gotten better at looking at products and testing them, not just trusting the sales guy that comes into you and tells you this is the greatest product since sliced bread. We test it and actually make sure it works now. There's been times we bought stuff, because the salesman said it was great, and yeah, it was almost great. It cost us, thousands of dollars because it really wasn't great, and we had to replace it with something that was much better. So that would be my two biggest probably do-overs. Other than personally, I wished I would have went into physical therapy. You get to hurt people as you're helping them get better. I mean, it's so awesome. I say this as a person that just did some physical therapy a few days ago.
I wonder where that was coming from.
Yeah.
Well, Todd, thank you. There's some good comments here. Of course, Laura said buy Apple and Amazon stock. I was going to make a joke about that, but she stole my thunder. And I like Carrie's thought, would have gotten into this industry sooner. Carrie, don't know why that is, but that's a nice thought. That means you like what you do. And Matt, what do you have to share here?
Sure, absolutely. And I think everybody touched on it a little bit. And I think Ronald here wrote in the chat, this had to do with another subject, but he wrote inventory, correct par levels, staffing morale to help with retention. And you don't need 10 chemicals, maybe 5 would be right. And I think he hit on some really important things there, which is, Todd had mentioned it as well. You don't have to buy something from every sales rep that walks through the door. And it's really important to, again, create and document a strong strategy for success. And that should be at everything you do, not just scheduling and processes and procedures, but also things like inventory controls and procurement.
Appreciate that. We have one more slide before we get into our Q&A, and it's just kind of like an opportunity to share a final thought, maybe what unique or outside of the box advice you might share. So Todd, let's start with you. We'll do our Q&A in just a moment, but anything come to mind as a final thought or advice from you?
I don't know if it's really unique, but the biggest thing I would say is stay open-minded. It's about everything you're doing. Look at what's out there, look at the technology. If there's classes that are offered, hop in on those. ISSA, yes, I do webinars, but I love other classes. Every time there's one that comes up, I try to hop in and watch it, sit through it, because sometimes I'll pick up something out of that class. It's like, man, why aren't we doing that up here? And other times it's just reaffirming, hey, man, look what we're doing. Everybody else is doing that. And so that's probably one of my biggest thoughts,
Yeah, I agree. Not everything we see or do, you take one small nugget away, it's worth it. So I look at it the same way. That's a good thought. John, let's go to you. What do you have to share? Final thought.
Final thought. So, I'm kind of in the quotes sometimes. So Edison has this thing that says opportunities missed by most because it comes dressed in overalls and it's called work. All this stuff is, fail fast, get out and do it and learn from it. And then get back to the industry about the change. We have this concept, Jeff and I talked about this concept of crossing the chasm, which means technology is here and it's going to change the industry. We need everybody out there trying their best to help out.
Very good. Matt?
Sure, I'm going to go back to kind of the theme of what we've been talking about, which is document, clearly define what's critical to quality, what are your key performance indicators, and then communication as well. You can never have too much. I guess you can, but it's very hard to over communicate.
I hear you. Good stuff. All right, let's get into our Q&A as we move on. Just a reminder that if you're not part of our ISSA family, reach out and find out what we can do for you. So we just want everyone to be aware of this is your trade association globally. So if you're in the industry, this is where you belong. All right, so we've been watching our chat. We have our live questions. I'm going to start with one from Ismail, and it's probably more for you, John, as we look at this. Although all three of you have thoughts here, I'm sure. As autonomous cleaning equipment becomes more prevalent, what strategies can facility managers employ to ensure seamless integration of these technologies without compromising on cleaning quality or displacing the existing workforce? That's a long question. Can you see it there, John?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good question.
It is a good one.
Because a lot of times the decision's made strategically to buy the equipment, then it just shows up and folks have to figure out, what to do. A good workloading program, but training, it's been mentioned here, training is paramount. Hiring skill sets that as you transition to different technologies and tools, that you hire the skill sets that offset those. And don't, when you bring in the equipment, don't think it's going to change all your work overnight. Yeah, what we've found is it takes, when you're put in an autonomous piece of equipment, it takes at least 6 months to really work it into the workloading, like Matt and Todd have been saying. It just doesn't happen overnight. The workforce has to get used to it, and a lot of changes. So training could happen. Our training should be a part of that. And the last thing is, there are a lot of great frameworks out. ISSA has a lot of training, and also, the American standards of quality have training on, lean. Just reach out for these frameworks and learn how to make this transition.
Thank you. And I don't know, Todd, how about you next?
But the only thing I would say is just maybe that on displacing the workforce at the end. People always get scared anytime you bring in technology that they're going to lose their job. For us, we always look at it, hey, this is a better way to do the job, do it better. And so a lot of things we've tried to push to people as we brought in our new equipment and technology is, this is not going to replace you. It's going to make your job easier, and it will allow us to reallocate some of your time into other places that maybe need a little more help or actually need that hands-on touch. Where, even with just the simple scrubbers that we have out there, 10 years ago, I had an employee tell me, oh, I'll never use this scrubber. Yeah, we have to clean it up and all that. After he used it a couple times, he came back and mentioned to me, says, I don't know how I ever lived without that. It made my life so much better. I see the same now as we move to some of that new technology.
I think that happens with all new things that we use. There's a learning curve. You got to figure it out and make that work. But good thoughts, Todd. Matt, what do you have to add?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'd touch on the displacement of work as well. And also the quality piece of it, which is you need to integrate it into your current operations and have some form of a changeover plan, right? This isn't necessarily a plug and play, set it and, it's done, that's it. Somebody has to make sure they check on it, maintain it, review and make sure it's operating as efficiently as expected when you first had the assumptions and putting it in a facility. So there's absolutely that piece to it. But when you look at it as a whole, and we're doing some consulting work right now where we're recommending at least 1 or 2 autonomous pieces of floor equipment. Again, like Todd had mentioned, you're reallocating these resources into other tasks, right? And you really look at, there's a lot of detail work that often gets glossed over. And if you can eliminate the need to do some of these broad strokes, you can focus on the details of the day-to-day.
Yeah. And the thought of finding people came up so much today, or retaining staff. If you can't get people, then maybe this is the solution that maybe you choose right now, but maybe in the future it'll be forced because everyone's working at the burger joint that Todd goes to.
Can I just add 2 points?
Yeah, go ahead.
One is that when I found out around owning the cleaning company, is it's very labor intensive. So this autonomous equipment really relieves, I think, is what Matt and Todd were saying too, is really once they start to use it, they go, wow, I don't have to mop this 30,000 square feet. So and so that's one of the big, I think, and the second is most of the people we run into, they don't replace people. They have attrition really work people out of because it takes like what Matt said, it takes a while to get this technology settled down and cleaning in your workloading. By that time you have a retirement or something that happens, in that way, it's more attrition than replacement, I think.
Thank you. We're going to do 2 more questions. Okay. And we might go a minute or 2 over time, but here's our next to last, how important is it that the cleaning crew is seen by those served? And let's start with you, Matt. How important is that?
Well, we always say it's the first cleaning crew is the first to get a complaint and the last to ever be thanked for anything at all. So yes, it's extremely important that they get a chance to be seen, and that's not just by their supervisors or managers. That has to do with everybody in the facility, right? Cleaning, I think COVID probably put a unique spin on what people thought about cleaning, and probably to the benefit of many cleaning departments is it's now an important factor in a building, to everybody that may have just glossed it over in the past. And making sure that you prepare your staff and create that culture where it's okay to talk to building occupants, and make sure that, when they field a complaint, that they're ready to field it and they have an open stream of communication that they can, talk in an educated manner, to somebody bringing a complaint to them.
Right. Ronald agrees with you, Matt, in the chat. So
Oh, good.
good. Stamp of approval. John, let's go to you next on this question.
Okay, wait, tell me the question again.
The question is, how important is it that the cleaning crew is seen, visible?
So okay, yeah. So my thought is that, I've had folks who look at autonomous equipment going, we want to run it during the day so that folks think we're cleaning. It's so it's so invisible, and one of the things that we're focused on, is reporting. Reporting and which you can see clean, but it's all observation. Reporting gives you a data point. So unfortunately for cleaning, there are a lot of data points out there, and so some of this technology again gives you data points where you can now substantiate the fact that you are clean.
Thank you. And Todd, how important is it that your crew is seen?
From about 90% of our buildings, I would say it's very important, because then the people actually know the work is being done, but they see what the crews are doing and how they're doing it. If you're in at night, and I realize many places have to be cleaned at night. I've seen those complaints. My trash hasn't been dumped in a month. Well, we know it was dumped 2 days ago, but because nobody saw the guy dump it and somebody else threw a piece of paper in there, it wasn't done. And so actually having that and the chance that people see them going down the hallways and working, we think that's very helpful. Now, part of our work, we start real early. And so by the time a lot of people get in, we've cleaned the majority of the public areas. And then when people are in, they get to see us in the private areas. But having them, an employee be seen, we find that's very helpful.
I'm sure you all saw Ron's joke there. People would rather see a roll of paper in the stall than the GM in the hall. That's a good one. All right. Last question is this. I have it here. It's kind of a reflective question for each of you in your unique positions. What's the number one thing that keeps you awake at night? So there's no prep time for this question. John, let's go to you. You've got to have something that keeps you up at night.
Yeah, it's just a lot of things keep me up at night. Let's see the major
industry related.
Yeah, industry related. Okay. No, it's just better understanding the technology and how to work it into the workloading in terms of the industry, and helping in this transition. Technology is not good for everything, and I'd like to be a part of that, deciding where and how to use technology and as we go through this evolution.
It's a puzzle, right? It's going to be a constant evolving puzzle. And Matt, how about you?
I think that's a really tough question. Facility by facility, it may be slightly different, but I think the umbrella statement that I'd make is, investing in your people, right? We joked, right? First people to get a complaint, the last people to be thanked. Well, you can also, from your end, help support them, and that's providing educational and growth opportunities, whether it's skill-based, personal leadership, or personal management opportunities. I think those are some important things that we can provide our folks in the field.
Yeah, and those important things are, again, puzzles we have to think about that could keep us, mulling over in our heads. Todd, you get the last word when it comes to these topics. What keeps you up at night? And it's not your
So
IT team, I hope.
it's not, thank goodness. However, sometimes during the day they keep me, moving. If I was to look at the one thing that's probably the biggest thing that keeps me up, and that's equipment failure. You got people out there and you found out, oh, this piece of equipment hasn't been maintained now for a month. And, then you have to start asking why, because now if the custodian doesn't have his vacuum, they can't do their job. And it's not always vacuums. It's usually a lot bigger piece of equipment like scrubbers. And so that's probably the biggest thing. We do a lot of training. Most of the time it works. That few times it doesn't. And then you have a piece of equipment down. But just getting people to stay on top of things, make sure you have a program to maintain equipment. That's probably our biggest thing.
Well, that'll be a wrap. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, John. And thank you, Matt, for your time today. Great information. Love the thoughts from the audience and the questions, comments, and jokes as well. So very engaging conversation today. Everyone who was here or who registered, maybe they couldn't be here, will get a link to this recording. So we will be here forever on cmmonline.com. Thank you.